Hi, guys. Welcome back to Daily Origins Lifestyle Interview Series. I wanted to touch base and come back to part of the interview with Paula Hoss from CLN&DRTY. Because it was so important, we decided to make it into a part two. We dive into a little bit more about mental health and what it's like to live with it and grow with it and also support other people in it. So I hope you enjoy this part two of CLN&DRTY interview. And I'll wrap this up soon, but since you mentioned mental health, I would love to hear a little bit of how you've been a part of that.
Yeah, so it's definitely a bigger conversation, which maybe we can have in the future.
Absolutely.
I'd love to have that conversation because it's probably even more important than the business. It is more important than the business because it has a bigger impact, right? Like skin is great. Skin impacts the way you feel. It impacts your body. So I have struggled with mental health issues for as long as I can remember. I was first diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder when I was 15 years old. And it's been a struggle since then, now into my mid-30s. And it's been a journey. I've had very big lows where, been in inpatient and then in outpatient facilities. And I've also had huge highs, like, life is pretty good now. I've got a great medical team. I've got, my medications are really well managed. And I think it's important to have the conversation because, again, going back to comparison, people can go on our feed. They can go, look at interviews like this and say she's got it all together, but what we don't show is me in bed for 3 days at a time, just sobbing and wanting to end my life while everything looks good to people from the outside. So I think it's a super important conversation to have, and it being a continual conversation of people's journeys. It's definitely come more to the forefront in the past year, people talking about their battles with mental health and how isolation has impacted them and how the anxiety about getting sick from COVID has impacted them, or the anxiety of getting their loved ones sick from COVID has impacted them. I also struggle with I have a diagnosis of a generalized vestibular disorder, which is kind of it encompasses for me migraines, chronic migraines, vertigo, and then bipolar disorder can actually fall underneath it because it all has to do with the way your brain isn't necessarily firing correctly.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it's, again, super well managed right now, but it's been I think the entire month of January, all I did was work and lay in bed with migraines. I don't think I saw my family.
It's debilitating sometimes.
It's terrible. And knowing that you're not alone, right? Knowing that there are people that look like you that are struggling with the same thing. So again, women of color talking about it, people in marginalized communities talking about it, which is something that's not spoken about a lot. I really encourage people to speak about these things to the most of their ability, because there's people that look like you and that can identify with you that are talking about it. Mothers, right?
Right.
Mothers with children that are business owners, mothers in Massachusetts, that are dealing with these things. So I think it's an incredibly important conversation. I'd love to have more of the conversation. I survived a really terrible domestic abuse situation, which led me to abusing drugs and alcohol, which led to another massive learning and growth. But God is good. And again, he's really brought me through all of it. And I'm grateful for every single day on this earth because we're honestly not promised it. So
thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. I understand that a lot of people will feel comfortable just kind of burying their feelings and not sharing that, intimate of detail of their life. And I appreciate you being outspoken about it. 10 years ago, the talk about drugs and addictions and domestic abuse, just the conversations weren't there.
Yeah.
And being able to feel comfortable enough to open up about that is really important. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for helping me along that journey as well.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, to end things on clean and dirty note and back to business, I'm just kidding. What can we expect from Clean and Dirty in the future? And that could be short term or long term.
Yeah, you can expect to see us in more retailers. So we're expanding our retail reach, focusing first on, excuse me, like boutique salons. So if you are a space that has retail, or perhaps you have a great relationship with a space that has retail, we'd love to connect with you. And additionally, we have one big collection launching in May for our anniversary, our 5-year anniversary. So look forward to that. We're doing a lot of innovative treatments and some oldies but goodies kind of coming back with new looks. And I think I really again, feel called to more conversation about mental health and entrepreneurship, mental health in work with working mothers. God, like working mothers this year have it's been so rough. I'm really eager to have more conversations about that and to reach more people with that as well. So I can't wait to see where we are in a year.
It'll be really great to be able to look back and compare, this is what I wanted, this is what might have happened, this is what has changed throughout the year. It's incredible, because if you brought yourself back to March 2020 and we're probably 1 week into being locked down, it was very doubtful and gray and not as hopeful as it feels right now. And it's not to diminish anything that has happened throughout this past year. It's been tragic in a lot of ways. But being able to see back and just kind of put your hand on your shoulder and say, it's going to be okay. No matter the circumstance, we're going to be able to get through this. So
yeah. Do you remember, I think you were one of the first people I spoke to when we were trying to figure out how to manage stopping everything. So we had an event coming up together.
We did. And I remember that phone call was I was partially in lockdown and trying to finish one project I was so eager to finish. And I had to call you and say, we're pulling the event. And it was so uncertain. And I'm oh, in 3 weeks we'll be doing that event. That never happened. It's incredible.
I was journaling this morning and I looked back on an old that I had written, and it was 24,000, and I was gosh, 24,000 people have gotten sick in Massachusetts so far. Can you believe it? And I'm I am so blessed that I didn't know then what I know now, that over 500,000 people in Massachusetts have gotten sick and over 500,000 have passed away just within the United States. My brain would have been able to handle that. Can you imagine what kind of tailspin you would have gone into knowing that?
I know that the tailspin I went into just knowing that a neighbor's father passed away, and I was oh my God, it's panic that I've never had before, and sleepless nights. We're lucky that we don't know what the future will, we're not fortune tellers and we can see ahead.
And it also creates blessings and surprises, right?
Yeah, it does. It really does. I wouldn't be interviewing right now if I was on the path I was last year.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I remember that conversation we had, and I actually remember being relieved. I was okay, well, everybody's on the same page. We all understand we've got to do what we've got to do, and we'll reconnect. It's kind of fun that we're talking a year later.
I know. I'm really happy. We haven't. That was our last conversation.
Wow.
I know.
Full circle, Genevieve.
I know. Virtual high five. I'm so lame.
No, I love that. Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. I can't thank you enough.
What would you tell yourself a year ago? What would you, if you could put that hand on your shoulder? Look, I'm doing it to your shoulder.
Yeah. Oh man, the questions have been reversed. I'm somewhat of an introvert, so staying home and not having plans wasn't extremely scary for me. The one thing that I would say is that you had every right to be nervous about what this virus can do to people. But try to keep focusing on your mental health and your self-care, and appreciation is really what I've learned throughout this last year, like appreciation and slowing down. And, you know, I was quick to jump into a lot of like fitness online and doing this and doing that, and like anything to keep me busy while I was at home. And I think if I could look back, I'd still probably have done the same thing, but just like maybe pick and choose a little bit more about like what you really needed to do at that time.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I can agree with that.
well, thank you so much. Thanks for spinning it around too.